Howdy folks, Dreadshells here, and welcome back to World of Tanks. And I have another scout game to show you guys today on a city map. I don't want you guys to get the impression that I've shown two other games so far of scout gameplay on city maps. And I don't want you guys to get the impression that I get these kinds of games just as often on city maps and on corridor maps, just as often as I do on hybrid maps or open maps like Redshire or Highway or Malinovka. These kinds of games on city maps don't happen very often for me, and I don't think that they happen very often for anyone in a scout tank, because generally it's very, very hard to play your tank to its strengths in a scout on a city or a corridor map, because generally the vision lanes are very, very short. Like the distance in between where the enemy tanks and friendly tanks are sitting is what I mean by engagement distances, where they're traditional spots that they sit and start shooting at each other. Those distances are very, very short. So your extra view range and your extra camo rating and your extra camo rating on the move don't really mean much, if anything, on these kinds of maps, because you're just so close to the enemy that everyone will spot all their opponents for themselves anyway. So generally what you have to be trying to do in scouts on city maps is keeping your head down, not trying to peek and poke with the enemy, right? If you're sitting on if the enemy is sitting on a corner and you're sitting on the opposite corner of him, like the mirror image of him, don't try and peek and poke and trade with him. He has more armor, he has more alpha generally, and he has more hit points. So that's generally, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that people make in playing scouts on city or corridor maps is don't take that fight, right? It's not to your advantage. What you want to try and do is wait until he fires. Hang around your teammates, hang around teammates that have more armor than you and more hit points than you, and kind of play follow the leader, right? Is one way to call it. Play follow the leader with your teammates. They have more armor than you, they have more hit points than you, and hopefully they will be proactive or will be able to stand their ground in the appropriate areas on the map. Doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. But do what you can to be supporting your teammates with your firepower and your mobility, right? Those are the two things that you have in a scout on these kinds of maps, is your firepower and your mobility. So use your mobility to keep you from getting trapped in between two enemies. So always keep your enemy at hand's reach, so to say, or arm's reach, I should say, and don't let yourself be put into a situation that's not advantageous for you. And the other thing is use your firepower. Support your teammates if they are engaging the enemy, if the enemy is attacking and pushing them. Peek around the corner and shoot the enemy after you just fired, right? At one of your teammates. Or if the game has progressed to where enough enemy tanks have died to where there's open areas of the map to where you can move, go ahead and move through those and then start flanking the enemy. Generally, you have to wait longer on city and corridor maps for that kind of thing than you do on open maps. But just survive longer and you will start to get more opportunity on city maps. But like I said, I don't want you guys to get the impression that this happens a lot for me on these kinds of maps. It's just as frustrating for me to play in these kinds of on these kinds of maps in scouts as it is for you guys. So before I start rambling on too much longer, let's get going with the game here. So looking at the compositions here real quick, the enemy team have armor in their top tiers, IS-3, IS-6, Super Pershing, and T-28, and the T-44 100 doesn't have great armor, but it can bounce shots sometimes. T-29 has really good armor if it can hide its hull and its chassis and only expose its turret. We are a little bit on the softer side over here. We don't have as many armor tanks. We have a T-34, and I don't know if you could call the Centurion an armor tank. Its armor doesn't really work even when it hides its hull, its turret isn't very strong, and you can easily overmatch the roof of the Centurion. So unfortunately, as far as composition is concerned, they have the better team for this kind of map, right? So they have more armor than we do. And as far as the bottom half of the team lists, it's a lot of DPM type tanks and more mobile tanks and bottom tiers. There's some scouts and some low tier mediums here, and there's two already on their team and 3 on ours. So I'd say that our team, during the countdown timer, you would want to think that you would want to play this game a little bit more conservatively and not as aggressively as if you were on the enemy team and had their composition. So the one thing that we do have going for us is that we are top tier technically, because the WZ-131 gets matched up as a tier 8 tank, and it can see up to tier 10, so we are top tier technically. And we have more survivability than we would normally would if we were bottom tier. And the other thing that we have going for us is that in this game, I'm actually using the 100mm on the WZ-131, which is better for when you get onto these kinds of corridor and city maps, because it has more alpha and it has more penetration, right? So you can trade better, right? So if the enemy exposes themselves to your fire, you can shoot them and do more damage to them before they reverse back into cover, right? If you're using the 85mm on the WZ-131, that gun is more powerful when you can get sustained fire in on the enemy and do shot after shot after shot into them while they're exposed. Generally, that doesn't happen very often on city maps, at least in early and mid game, because the enemies aren't exposed for that long. So I think the 100mm is a better gun for these kinds of maps. So enough said, let's just get going with the game. And as far as where to go on Kharkov, I really don't like this map at all. Even if I wasn't in a scout, I don't like it because I don't think the layout is very conducive to team play. There's just too many corners and it spreads the team out too much, and generally teammates have a hard time supporting each other because the fighting areas are very isolated from one another. This is the one area that you can get vision, at least on this side of the map. You can spot the enemy team as they're sending tanks across here into the spoke wheel, I like to call it, the spoke wheel area of Kharkov on the southeastern corner of the map, where you see this courtyard area with all these diagonal streets that come out of it. So there is a mirror position on the other side for the northeast spawn that you can use and spot through this curved road right here if you're looking on the mini map. Get a nice shot into the VK-2801 as he exposes himself, and this is what I'm talking about. This is what you don't want to do in your light tanks on city and corridor maps, right? You don't want to be the forwardmost tank, right? And you don't want to be peeking and poking with tanks that have more armor and hit points than you, right? So right now I'm just kind of playing and supporting this T-34, right? Because I spotted enough of these tanks, enemy tanks going into the spoke wheel, I know that there can't be very many enemy tanks here in the middle, right? So I'm taking a gamble here, and taking a gamble that the T-29 is fairly isolated. Unfortunately, there was a T-28 prot over here, but luckily we were able to get back into cover in this L house, so the T-28 couldn't shoot us. But I'm helping push the middle here as much as I can, because I know that there's a ton of enemy tanks over here in the southeast, and we're going to lose this. So we need to kill out the other side of the map. I'm gonna pause the game here because too many things are happening at once, and I don't have enough time to comment on them. What I was doing there is what I was talking about during before I started the game, is that I was just playing follow the leader with this T-34, right? Even though we have an advantage over here in the center area of the map here, if you look on the mini map here, we have an advantage over here on this map, right? We outnumber the enemy, although not by a lot, and we need to kill the enemy that's in the center and in the north here as fast as we can, before the enemy team finish killing out this side of the map over here, right? Generally, when you're talking about tactics, I like to be on the offensive more than I am on the defensive in a scout. Like, I don't, and what I mean by that is I don't like to go back here and play support for my teammates here generally, unless I think they have a chance of actually winning. If I do that, if I don't think that I can win by doing that, generally I don't do it, and I usually try to help my team push an advantage somewhere else on the map, as long as there's no risk of us getting capped out, right? So what I did there is I waited for the T-34 to peek and poke with the prot. The T-28 prototype shot and fired, and now I'm taking advantage of the fact that my T-34 tanked for me, right? He has more armor and more hit points, so he can afford to get shot. So I'm driving across here, taking advantage of the fact that the T-28 prototype is reloading, and my plan is to get over here, and then that way we can shoot this T-28 prototype from two different directions, right? My T-34 can shoot him from this side, and I can shoot him from this side. My T-34 gets a nice shot into the T-28 prot, and we secure the kill. And we unexpectedly run into a T-34-85, a tier 6 Russian medium, who is still sitting here and not doing very much of anything. So he isn't really a high threat to us, but we do have to kill him. And we end up doing most of the damage to him, even though I had a T-34 behind me, maybe bounced off the T-34-85. Alright, going to pause the game here. I may actually be doing a misplay here. What I should be doing, what I end up doing is I go up into the 9 and the 0 lines hunting for Artie. Potentially what I could be doing is moving over here and relocating with the AMX CDC on my team and helping kill out this Panther M10. I could relocate back into the middle and help kill this Super Pershing over here that's on the slightly outside center middle road here, middle street rather. Or I could post myself up here in F7 and E7 and E8 and shoot the enemy tanks here as they cross this curved street here as they push into our cap zone, right? So I can maybe get a couple of shots of damage. It's kind of hard to do that sometimes because if you look on the mini-map here, this K-line road here is actually in a depression compared to this curved road right here. So if they sit along this road here, you only have a very small window of opportunity to shoot them before the terrain covers most of their tank as they're driving along this road. So I might be making a misplay here, but it ends up not affecting the outcome of the game, luckily. So let's just keep going. Kharkov is one of those maps that has a ton of angles and corners on it, and it's very easy to get isolated because and get yourself into a spot where your teammates can't support you or you can't support your teammates. There we go, we find the FV-207, the tier 8 British artillery, and very annoyingly we bounce our first shot off the side of him, even though it was angled. And our second shot just disappears into the ether. I have no idea what happened to that shot. Another really bad shot there on my third shot. That third shot could have bounced too because it was angled. Some really lazy auto aiming. So we should have killed the FV-207 2 shots ago, unfortunately. So that second shot on the FV-207 was really buggy. I have no idea where that shot went. Those kind of shots are really annoying. But now we've come up behind the Panther M10 as he's engaging with our Centurion 1, and we're able to get a shot into the back of his tank and actually set him on fire via either his fuel tank or his engine. And we get a super nice roll there on the M44. This gun does 250 alpha damage, so we rolled a little bit high and were able to actually kill the M44 in one shot. Something that the 100mm is better at than the 85mm as its alpha damage. Kind of annoyed with my CDC teammate there. gonna pause the game. I noticed that we were being capped here, right? So I think what was happening at the time is that I was noticing that I was kind of a misplay, me trying to kill enemy arty and go up here instead of going back here and help to play in the middle and or defend my cap zone. And I realized that I'm kind of out of position, right? So what I was trying to do is go along this road here and to get back to my cap to reset, right? Because it's the more direct route, right? And I can get back to my cap zone quicker to reset. Because who knows, maybe the IS-6 or the Tiger might hop on cap 2, and then we won't have 1 minute. We'll probably only have about 20 or 25 seconds before they cap, right? So I was trying to get back before and take the most direct route, and he kind of cut me off there, so that was kind of why I was annoyed with him there. But luckily, none of the other enemy tanks are capping so far, and now we know we don't have to worry about the Tiger capping because he's moving out here into the outside, into the northwest side of the map, and trying to get shots either on the Centurion or on us. And we can see there that it's the ELC that's capping, which kind of makes sense. And the T-34 ends up killing him there, which is nice. It takes the cap pressure off, and now we don't have to worry about it anymore. And now it's kind of pretty much into cleanup mode as we now outnumber the enemy. We have 5 tanks, and they only have 2. And now I'm going to work here on this Tiger, as he's the closest enemy to me at the moment. Flank around behind him here. Get a nice second shot into him. He's about to get his gun on me, so I'm moving around here. And unfortunately, I get shot by my CDC teammate back here. As I'm driving into the line of fire there. Doing something really, really stupid. I think I was really, really irritated. I'll pause the game there. I think I was having a really bad play session, and sometimes it only takes 1 or 2 things to make me kind of lose my temper. I thought about shooting the CDC there after he team damaged me, but luckily I held my fire. I was so mad that I didn't even bother turning around to finish killing the Tiger 1. I did have the hit points to spare, but I shouldn't have done it. I should have finished killing the Tiger 1 and then maybe moved on. But then our team ended up killing the, I think it was the IS-6, who was the other tank that was left alive over here, and they end up killing him as well. So. And we end up winning by 5 tanks. But I don't think that the CDC was trying to shoot me. I was just trying to traverse and circle the Tiger and stay in front of his gun, but unfortunately it was really bad timing, because as I was trying to stay in front of his gun so he couldn't shoot me, I ended up driving in between the CDC and him just as the CDC fired. So if you're teammate is circling an enemy tank, just be paying attention to it, and try and wait for a second or 2 before they clear your line of fire, and then go ahead and shoot the enemy tank. And if you're the person who's circling an enemy tank, do your best to quickly get around the enemy tank, right? So your teammates have line of fire on the enemy, so they don't accidentally shoot you, or so that they can shoot the enemy quicker. So anyway, that is the game here in my WZ-131 on Kharkov, and hopefully you guys get a little bit of a feel for how this map plays. Generally, I like to spot this curved road over here in the southeast that kind of curves from F0 all the way over here to K6, this kind of on the southeast side here. I don't like going out here to the northwest side of the map. If you guys are curious, I generally never go out here unless it's late game and there isn't any enemy presence out here, because if you go out here you end up trapping yourself, and it's very, very difficult to retreat from this A1, B1, A2 corner area, even with these buildings for cover. Because what ends up happening is, if you look at the minimap, actually I don't even need to do that, you guys can see directly here. This is the corner area over here, right? In A1. If you go over here in a scout and say this is the side of the enemy over here, they have snipers here, and they can have tanks here and here. And what ends up happening is you have 2 to 3 angles of fire of enemy tanks that can shoot you, right, when you go out here. And also any enemy tanks that move into this D4 area out here, they can also shoot you. And generally it's not very uncommon at all for enemy tanks to move into this lower depression area right here. In the D2, C2, C3, and B4, this outside lane area right here, it's not uncommon for enemy tanks to go there too. So you end up trapping yourself in a pincer, right? And I don't like going into positions in scouts where I trap myself, right? You don't have the armor and the hit points to fight your way back out if you get trapped, right? So use your mobility to keep yourself from getting into positions where you get trapped. Is generally what you try and do with scouts. But anyway, I've rambled enough. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Happy hunting out there in your games on Kharkov. Take care.